Hello, my name is Sandra Aldrich. My husband Jay and I are volunteers in Great Smoky Mountains National Park in the Resource Education Division. Today, I'm going to read you a story that I wrote. Stuart Squirrel Learns a Lesson in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. Stuart Red Squirrel loved living in Great Smoky Mountains National Park. His family had lived here for generations and generations. He couldn't believe how beautiful this park was. Stuart's friends loved this park as well. They would play and romp all day, except for school days, of course. His parents and teachers would go over the rules for safety almost every day. It seemed a waste of time to keep going over these safety rules so much. Even his friends thought so. Really, what could happen to them in this wonderful park of theirs? Monday's lesson was about eating only the food they were taught to eat since they were young. Since this year was a good year, there were plenty of acorns, nuts, seeds, and berries to keep their tummies full. Stuart's teacher, Mrs. Reddish, was talking once more about not eating hikers' food or any food that could have been dropped on the ground. Since the class listened so carefully, Mrs. Reddish let the class play nut burying and let them take part in dray building. A dray, as Mrs. Reddish explained, is what squirrels called their nests. She wanted all the animals in her class to learn about how and where others lived. A few days later, Stuart Squirrel and Chester Chipmunk decided to go wandering. They would take turns playing hide-and-go-seek in the forest. Stuart hid in a hole in one of the tulip trees, and Chester hid under the leaves of a pincherry tree. After playing pecan dodgeball and follow the bouncy tail, they decided to go to Rainbow Falls. They loved watching the water come down the 80-foot-high falls. It was fun taking waterfall mist baths. As they stopped for a break, they noticed some hikers eating as they sat on the big rocks nearby. "Oh boy, Chester, look at that food!" cried Stuart. "No food from hikers, Stuart," cried Chester. "You know what we have been taught about food from hikers." "Yeah, I know, but a little bit won't hurt us," answered Stuart. "No, now let's go now," replied Chester. And finally, Stuart followed him down the trail towards home. When Stuart got home, his mom wanted to know what he did with Chester. He explained how they played hide-and-go-seek and then went to Rainbow Falls, where they saw some hikers. "You didn't eat any of their food, did you?" asked his mom. "No, we left, but I still don't get why we can't eat what they eat," exclaimed Stuart. "Stuart, I have told you, and so has Mrs. Reddish. It can make you sick. You know that we worry about you and tell you these things because we love you. Now go wash up for dinner," replied Mrs. Squirrel. Stuart listened to his mom and ate his dinner. Soon it was time for bed. Stuart thought all about the food those hikers had, and bet if the hikers had seen him and Chester, they could have gotten some. Since it was the weekend, Stuart decided to go on a long hike by himself. He hiked over to the Elkmont campground. Stuart loved going to the Elkmont campground. There was a river he could drink from, and just maybe he could find some of that food that campers left behind. He was tired after all that running to get there. After resting a bit, Stuart decided to search for some of that human food he hoped he would find. He looked around one of the campsites, but didn't see any. Stuart did find some acorns, though, so he sat and started to eat a few. A short time later, Stuart noticed a little boy who was eating a sandwich at a picnic table. Stuart decided to go up to him. It wasn't that Stuart forgot what he was taught in school. and what his mother told him about eating people food. He just knew it looked so good, and if this little boy could eat it, why couldn't he? After all, it smelled just like some of the nuts that were in the park, so it had to be okay. Stuart ran over to the little boy, whose name was Tommy. Stuart looked up at Tommy and started to chatter. "I'm Stuart, and I sure would like whatever you have. I get tired of acorns and seeds. I see hikers eating other things than these old seeds and acorns." The little boy just looked at him and didn't understand what Stuart was trying to say. He figured that Stuart was just begging for some of his peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Tommy thought if he gave Stuart some of his sandwich, then maybe he would play fetch with him. He put some of the food down on the ground, and Stuart gobbled it up. When Stuart finished eating, Tommy threw his ball and watched Stuart get it. Stuart decided to get Tommy to play squirrel games, but Tommy didn't understand. Just then, Tommy's mother called and said it was time to get back to the tent. "I hope I get to see you again," Tommy called as he left. Stuart started running home. When he reached his nest in the tall fir tree, his tummy was really hurting. "What's wrong?" Stuart's mom asked as he came up the tree. "Did you fall and hurt yourself?" "No, I ate this little piece of food that tasted like nuts that this little boy shared with me, and now I don't feel so good," cried Stuart. "Now, Stuart, you know we told you not to eat people food, but I understand. When I was a little girl, I was curious about human food, so I tasted some, and I liked it. But like you, my tummy started to hurt. That is why Mrs. Reddish and I tell you not to eat anything but your own food." Mrs. Squirrel felt his head and had him lie down on his soft, leafy bed. "I know you have a tummy ache, and I also know just the thing for that," Mrs. Red Squirrel said as she gave him a kiss on his head. "I'll be right back," she said as she left his room. Stuart snuggled down in his bed and waited for Mom. "Here is some herbal tea that will make your tummy feel better," Mom said as she handed Stuart the warm mug. Stuart fell fast asleep as soon as he finished it. The next day in school, Stuart volunteered to stand up in front of his class and explain what happened when he ate food from humans. "I have learned my lesson. Don't eat human food, and don't try to talk to or play with humans ever. They don't understand when you try to talk to them anyway. I promise to never eat anything people bring into the woods again." We know that animals really can't talk and teach their children not to eat the food that people eat, so we must learn the lesson for them. When you go to any national park, you must never feed the animals. Remember, we must leave no trace of our visit. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the story. Bye.